So for those of you that we may not have met before, my name's Ann Oro, and I work as the Assistant Superintendent for the Union County Elementary Schools, and I support all the schools with instructional technology. I'd like us to all begin in prayer, and if we could put ourselves in the presence of the Lord and bless ourselves and pray together in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy
Holy
Spirit.
Spirit.
Mary, friend and mother to all, through your Son,
God.
God has found a way to unite
All right,
himself
but listen,
to
this Zoom
every
already
being,
started, so
all to be one
I'll talk to you
people,
later. Okay. Bye.
sisters and brothers to each other. We ask for your help in
In
calling
calling
on
on
your
our
Son,
Son.
to seek forgiveness for the times when we have failed to love and respect one another. We ask for your help in obtaining from your Son the grace we need to overcome the evil of racism and to build a just society. We ask for your help in following your Son so that prejudice and animosity will no longer infect our minds or hearts, but will be replaced with a love that respects the dignity of each person. Mother of the Church, the Spirit of your Son, Jesus, warms our hearts. Pray for us. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. You can take a look at anything we talked about with every teacher in remote learning, with the early childhood conversations, and these, which I'm calling lessons learned conversations. And today's is really general. I didn't focus on a specific topic. I just wanted us to have a chance to talk about what has worked for you over the last 3 months, free resources that you used with your students, if you've used it before March, or is this something new to you? What are you looking at for next year that you may not have that you want to find? And so that'll be kind of framing our conversation today. So the way that I hold these conversations, I just ask people when they feel like they're ready to share something, that you just unmute yourself and let us know what worked for you or what questions you have, because I wasn't in your position. I didn't on March 13th suddenly have to transition to teaching online. Everybody in this room has a lot more answers of what specifically worked with you and your students and parents than I might have. I just have the technical know-how to use a lot of the tools, and I have some knowledge of a lot of tools that are out there. So what I'd like to start with is just a general question to you. Whoever feels comfortable sharing, what's worked for you as a teacher with your students, with your families, to continue the learning in this remote situation? So what tool did you find that's free or low cost?
I'll go.
Thanks, Heather.
So, I mean, we're using Google in the upper school, so Google Slides has been very, very helpful, especially the ability to set things that you don't want students to be able to delete or change as the background in the slide. So I learned very quickly this year that you have to outsmart them because they're pretty smart. What else? Edpuzzle lets you take YouTube videos or sometimes other videos, but mostly videos that you can find on YouTube. And there's a lot that are already there with questions inserted that you can actually assign through Google Classroom to your students. And if the questions are multiple choice, it will automatically score them for you. And if they are short answer, where you would want to kind of look at that yourself, they have those as well. So, and that's completely free. I also just recently came across a website called Desmos, Desmos, and it's very math oriented, and it's better for the upper grades. I teach 5th, but you can find some. We did a really fun probability activity yesterday. We used it a few weeks ago for, I don't even remember what, but again, they can log in with their Google Classroom, which is nice because trying to introduce new things and then collecting like just a laundry list of passwords and logins is awful. So the ability to just log into all of these things with Google has really been helpful. I've also been using like Seesaw and Flipgrid, which Seesaw I used last year when I taught second grade, but hadn't used it. I felt like it was maybe like too young for fifth grade, but it's not. It was helpful for kind of keeping some of our like morning meeting traditions alive, like just a quick check-in. And Flipgrid we've been using kind of on and off all year. So that's some of what I've been doing.
Oh my gosh, Heather, that is great. You really shared a lot of ideas there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my screen sharing. And anybody who would like to share something, so Heather, even after I do this, if you want to jump in and share your screen, feel free to. But I wanted to talk about a couple of things that Heather had mentioned. So one of the things that happened early in our work online is that teachers were trying to figure out how do they support their students in almost what would amount to a worksheet methodology. And so this is Google environment. About 80% of our elementary schools use Google in some way. So if you're not a Google school or if you haven't learned yet, talk to your tech integrator, feel free to reach out to me. But what Heather, I imagine you were talking about is that you had learned how to make an image or slide background or a PDF, so background. So you can go ahead and choose any image you like as a background, and it could be something that's in your Google Drive, or it can be something that you upload. Let's say that this is what I want to have as my slide background. Can you make a square, it says. And what Heather was talking about is that it's easy for kids to change the wording. So I'm going to make this a blank slide. And now when you share this with students, it says, can you make a square? But you can't type on it because it's part of the background of the slide. And then the students could use whatever tools they have to try to make that square for you. So that was one thing that that Heather shared. If you've never seen that, making a slide background is a really good way to lock things down for students. Another tool that Heather mentioned is a thing called Ed Puzzle. And Ed Puzzle has free pieces and paid for pieces. The benefit to all of you is that during COVID time, over the past 3 months, a lot of websites just allowed you to use all of their tools for free. But when I log in, and I'm just going to sign on with Google because it makes it, like Heather said, so much easier than to create and use passwords for everything. I'm going to agree to that. So what I can do is I can go ahead and I can create a video and bring in some YouTubes. And I can choose to pause. So if I was going to teach, why don't we say two-step equations. Rather than having a student just plow through the video, and we all know that students, they watch videos like they watch anything on YouTube. They don't realize that you can pause and reflect. So you can, with Ed Puzzle, watch the video, and then when you think that they've learned enough, you can pause it and you can insert a question. So I haven't used this in a long time, Heather. So you're going to be, if you wanted to share one of your Ed Puzzles, it's probably better than me. But you could also cut the video so that you could just show a portion of the video. So that's the idea behind Ed Puzzle. And if somebody wants a little bit more of a view from the teacher's side, we can ask Heather if she'd like to share her screen and just give us a little bit better demonstration. Another tool that Heather just shared is called Desmos. So Desmos is DESMOS.com, and it provides a lot of pre-made explorations that you could do with your students in the area of math. And teacher.desmos.com allows you to build your own math explorations or to use explorations that other people have already created. And so it's really nice because it allows you to get something done, and I'm signing in with Google again, without having to create it all yourself. And another one, just in case you've never heard of it, Heather and everybody else, is GeoGebra. And GeoGebra is another free tool. And in GeoGebra, you're working with geometric information, geometry, 3D calculators, scientific calculators. So let's pause for a second before I talk about two more that Heather had shared. So does anybody have a question for Heather about her work? And also, but does anybody have a question for Heather about how she used Edpuzzle or Desmos? Okay, I think so far we're so good. Have you played around with GeoGebra, Heather, with the kids, or have you heard about that one?
I did. We taught graphing coordinates, and they have a coordinate. They have multiple versions of like coordinate battleship.
Oh, nice.
They have it in one quadrant, and then they have it in all 4 quadrants. So I had them do that on their own, but then I also gave them the option that if they wanted to hop on Zoom, I could set them up in like breakout rooms with a partner, and they could play against a friend.
And you know, that's really what we're talking about when we're really looking to assist our students in learning online and not make it become overburdensome and rote. So that's fantastic that you're using the breakout rooms with those games, Heather. And were you able to jump in and listen to conversations as they were working?
To be honest, because I told them that they could come on, only 2 people did. So we just did
all right.
in the room. And we forgot to do things like, you know, go over the fact that once you place your pieces, you can't move them. So one friend kept moving her pieces and the other kept guessing, and he'd be like, wait, but I like, you know, he's like, well, you know, it was, but now it's not. And it was a whole mess. And, you know, she also like kind of hid a lot of the pieces in like one of the other quadrants, and he thought we were just graphing in like the first quadrant. It was a learning experience, but yeah.
And I love the way you said that, Heather. It is everything that everybody was doing over the last 3 months was a huge learning experience. And sometimes if you just had 2 kids willing to try something, now next year, if you do it again, you've got a couple of hints of some rules you want to put in place, I would imagine, right? Okay, so another thing that Heather had mentioned that I'm going to do another screen share with you. And then I'm going to bring Leslie in because I remember from this morning you're working with math as well. Another tool that we'll talk about with everybody, because there may be many of you who've used the tool that Heather mentioned called Flipgrid. And Flipgrid, if you haven't heard of it, is a great free tool. It's more or less free forever and free for everybody. What it does is it allows you to, again, good old Google sign-on. It allows you to post a question to the students and then allow them to respond back to you. Flipgrid can be useful for any kind of conversation that you're having with your students. So it's great for religion, where you can post an idea or a topic and then ask the students to respond. It's great for them explaining their thinking about something. You can use it to allow art students to share their reflection on a piece of art. Flipgrid's great for Spanish so that they can, or any foreign language, so that you can hear them responding. And this is just a little example that I was doing with a friend of mine who works in the public schools. You create these things called grids, and a grid is kind of grouped by a theme. So it could be a particular religion lesson or Spanish lesson. In this example, it was an English language arts. And then each of these little questions has a set of grids that you can put together. And I believe that I'm sharing my audio. Hopefully, let me see. I think I am, so you should be able to hear it. But what I asked was just the question, what are you reading? So when you are a student, you can click on this plus sign and they log on with their account, whether it's a Flipgrid account or whatever. It turns on and you have to allow your microphone. These videos are private, so you don't have to worry about them being public, although they can be made public. And then the student just clicks on the little recorder, it counts them in. They can explain, you know, what it is that they're reading. And then when they're done, they hit the next button. They can review. Did they like what they were saying? They can take a picture. That becomes their face on the screen. And just like anything else, they can decorate it.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes their submission. So let's say that I'm reading a throwback book, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I don't think I spelt that right, but, and then they submit the video. What this does then is the entire class can listen to what I'm reading, what my friend is reading. These things can then be used as other jumping off points to talk with the students. So you could choose a student response and say, you know, what can you share with me about what you've read about Harry Potter? So Flipgrid is a great tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Leslie to jump in for a second, and then I'll...
I actually have a question for Heather. The different sites, I wrote down what you suggested. Did you use them more as activities and games or create assignments through those things?
On Edpuzzle, it was like kind of a mix. What I tend to do with the Edpuzzle is I'll find a video, because honestly, if you think it's a good video, there's probably some other teacher somewhere who also thought it was a good video to use. So you can use it as a jumping off point, and you can actually take what other people have created. And then if maybe you're like, well, I don't think 3 questions is enough in this, then you can go back and you can add in other ones.
Okay.
You can print out things that they used. You can kind of move it around and make it your own. So that I have kind of played around with. Desmos is a little intimidating. And I've only found it in the past few weeks. So my plan is to kind of play around with it over the summer and figure out how it works and maybe build a few things, because, you know, if I know what I'm teaching next year anyway, then I can kind of think ahead to what might be well suited for it. And then things like Seesaw and Flipgrid, I mean, it's very simple. A lot of the time it's just, you know, type in a blurb, add like a picture or some kind of catchy graphic, and put a due date, and you're good.
Oh, okay. All right, so that's what I meant. So you made it like an assignment.
Usually, yeah. The Seesaw things tend to be kind of check-ins in the morning. So something that I did in my classroom all year was, instead of putting like a number up on the calendar, like they do in like kindergarten for a second, I had them do mathematical expressions. So if like today is, I don't even know what day it is. Today's the 11th. So like someone might say, oh, 6 + 5, or like 5 × 2 + 1. And they put that up on the calendar. So I had them doing that and posting their answers for that. And sometimes there would be like a morning share question, just, you know, quick little things so that, you know, I knew they were still there. and something that was maybe a little bit more fun than, I mean, I think math is fun, but I mean, not all of them do. And then for Flipgrid, those are more reflections about things, or like explain your work. Like you can use it for math in terms of, here's a problem, explain, like show how you would solve this problem, or explain why the answer, like this person's work is incorrect.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
No problem.
And that's a really good explanation too. Some of these are great formative assessments, but if you're just, you don't have to have a child do 15 math problems. If you have somebody do one thing in Flipgrid and explain, you might be able to understand where their misthinking is going and be able to have a private conversation later. For Heather and any other math teacher, last year I went to the ISTE, which is a big convention, and one of the sessions that I attended was called Desmos Can Do What? Activities that Dive Deeper. So they're kind of clumped in with each other in the chat, but the top link will take you to this, and then the bottom link, they gave us at that same session a scavenger hunt. This is really helpful because what it does is you could use this as a teacher just to learn, but then you could even share these with your students as ways for them to get used to Desmos. So for example, I can plot 4 points, one in each quadrant, and turn on labels. So you could try to make Desmos do it yourself. And then if you can't figure it out as a teacher or as a student, as a self-check, it brings you into Desmos and it shows exactly what was done to make this happen. So hopefully those 2 links will be helpful for both of you and anybody else who wants to play with that. Renee, what would you like to share with us?
Oh, I am on mute. I was gonna say I've even used Flipgrid for quizzes actually. I teach language arts, and the same way you would do a math thing that they have to explain something, I've used it as a way to actually quiz, because then it's totally individual. They have to explain exactly what they mean by like making a video. So like what I did recently was I was teaching poetry. So I was like, all right, read the poem on your own and then answer these 3 questions if you can, and then any other insight. And then the other thing that's nice about Flipgrid is you can moderate it. So there's a setting where if you post a video, no one else can see it. So I actually use it as a quiz because once they posted their video, no one else can see what someone else did. So it's just a way of like moderating what they were doing. And then I could just watch the videos and assess it that way.
Would you be comfortable sharing your screen and just showing us, if you set up a new activity, how you would make that check mark in the settings?
Oh yeah.
That'd be awesome. But one of the things the reason that I was working with my girlfriend on this, she was trying to figure out how she would do a Socratic seminar, because she's used to having conversations with her kids physically in the classroom. And so we were talking about using Flipgrid as that idea that somebody could share a thought and then people could build on it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I have it open here, so I'll show you. Okay. So this is pretty much what I had them do, this poetry quiz right here. I don't know if I'll be able to see it in this setting, but obviously they've all posted. But it's something in the settings.
Like, could you make a new activity? Okay, and there you go. Okay.
There it is, right here. It's once you make the new activity, it's right on the right. It says video moderation. If you just check that off, no one can see it unless you allow them to be hidden. So once you just have to check that off, and then if I go back, pretty much all these are hidden until I check mark saying that it's active, and then anyone can see that.
And the nice thing about that then is that if you have an exemplar, or if you have something that you want to just discuss, I could see how that would be helpful that way in turning on something.
Yeah.
Very nice. Thank you so much for sharing your screen. Judy was also mentioning in the chat that Flipgrid is great to use for choice board opportunities. One of the things that we've been talking about as a group in the Archdiocese is the fact that you don't have to have every student do the exact same opportunity. It's better if you can differentiate. You know, we know that. But one of the things that technology allows us to do, especially in remote learning, is to give them a series of choices to choose from. So rather than having every student do a certain number of problems from a book page, or everybody write the same essay, with the lower grades, you know, rather than telling everybody you have to find 5 words that begin with the letter W, you could have them choose 6 or 7 different ways to show that they understand what that W sound is like. So they could use, if it's Flipgrid, they could use Flipgrid to show you things in the house, almost go on a scavenger hunt and show the pieces. They could hold up books to the screen. They could show animals or whatever it is they have in the house. So the beauty of Flipgrid is that it works on anything. So you can have a laptop, a Chromebook, a cell phone, an iPad. So depending on what technology your students have in the house, it's pretty accessible to the students as well. And the other one that that Heather had mentioned, if you've, again, you may have seen it, but if you never have, is a tool called Seesaw. And Seesaw is another tool that it's mostly free. And when I say mostly, as a free tool, you're allowed up to 10 Seesaw classrooms. If you have a need for more than 10, you just have to archive or put away one of the 10. So for most teachers, even specials teachers, Seesaw is a good tool because if you're teaching pre-K to grade 8, it's almost about 10, 10 classrooms. If you're more self-contained, or if you're just working with grades 5 through 8, you can pretty much stick within that limit of 10. And then with the free edition, when the students move on to another grade level, that's it. That's their portfolio in Seesaw is over for that year. It seems like either it is me or it's Seesaw, but it's kind of connecting forever. So we can come back to that. But Seesaw is a portfolio tool, and it does have sign into Google. And the idea behind Seesaw is that you have the opportunity to show what you know via drawings, via videos, via photographs. For the youngest kids, it's really good because it allows the teacher to respond in voice, so the kids don't need to be able to read. And it allows the children to respond in voice, so they don't have to be able to write. So, like I said, Heather, you gave us a whole lot of interesting ideas there, and they can work across all grade levels. What opportunities are you looking to kind of fill in some of the holes in what you were teaching with your students? Is there something that you tried to do to support the students with their learning, but you couldn't find just the right tool?
I can share that, Anne.
Great, Chris, thanks.
I teach 7th and 8th grade science and language arts in addition to, doing the technology. And for me, the biggest fail I had was doing science labs with them, because at, the point we couldn't go into the school and I couldn't get materials. So I was, making do with whatever I had. And I put something up which had to be optional because they had no opportunity to go out and get materials. So I want to believe that they didn't have some of these basic things in their house, even though some of them said, yeah, no, I can't do it, and they just didn't. But most of my kids, I have to say 99%, 7th and 8th graders, independent, working, doing what they're supposed to be doing. We were not chasing them for assignments. we did have that issue in other grades. Definitely that was there. But so I have to believe them that that's what they said. But then when some of my really good ones who I know do their own science experiments are saying no, I'm like, okay, this isn't working. So we did some virtual labs, you know, but we really lost out on that. You know, that was a big miss. Now I know the second grade teacher had their kids going outside and drawing with the chlorophyll in the leaves to make the color green. So I saw a lot of videos for the little ones where that really worked, but for the older ones, and I know the 5th and 6th had fails with that too. You know, so that clearly was something we have to, you know, come up with an idea for if we go into this scenario again.
That's a
I had
great.
a similar
thought.
problem.
Okay, and with what area?
It was
Science
social
as well?
studies. I had them try to like build a project too, and I was very lenient. I was like, just whatever you have at home, because I know like some of us don't have stuff at home, or like, you know, if you're gonna order stuff, it's gonna take even longer. So I was very lenient with it too. So I had the same issue.
And was it more in the English language arts vein, or are you self-contained and it was within science?
It was within social studies. I teach social studies and
studies.
language arts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just out of curiosity, has anybody worked on project, either science or social studies, language arts, where you found at least a project that you were really proud of that you would like to share with the group? And so what I'm doing is I'm keeping sort of a tickler list for myself. And so virtual labs and social studies kind of projects, that's something that I'm sort of adding to my list of items that I'm going to look into over the summer. But again, even if we move past something and somebody has something they'd like to share where you really felt good about an outcome, please do share it. Leslie?
Yeah, I do towards the end of the year a proportion activity. I have a large giant hand, which was really mine, and they have to measure their own arm, their own leg, their own hand, and they get the giant's hand, and then they'll get the giant's height, the giant's arm length, the giant's leg. Obviously, I do it in groups, and they create a giant, and then we go outside, and they actually make the giants like 24 feet. So they go outside with sidewalk chalk. So I did tell them early on, if you have sidewalk chalk at home, I said at 10 o'clock the night before we do this, don't tell mom, you have to go get sidewalk chalk, because you can draw it, but it's more fun. And I got a lot of them did, you know, I gave them a window of days because of the weather. And unfortunately it was individual, but I made it 2 parts. So the first part of the project, I Zoomed with them explaining how to set it up. And before they made their giant, I made sure all the measurements were correct, because I knew about what their giant should be, the arm length, the leg length, and so forth. And in front of me, they measured, you know, I explained to them how to measure their arm and their hand and so forth. And so they had a lot of fun doing that. Of course, it's a lot more fun when you're in school and you're all on the blacktop together doing it. But a lot of them did it on their sidewalk or driveway, and then they sent me pictures of it. So that was fun.
That's a great project, Leslie. I'm really glad that you shared that with everybody, because everybody, you know, these creative ideas make it so much more interesting to the students, and you took that time as a teacher to make sure they had those proportions right, which are always the hard part for the kids.
Yeah.
What a lot of fun.
It was good.
And good learning too in the math. I had noticed that you were unmuted, and I was wondering if any of the other things that we talked about, if you had something that you'd like to share with the group, either something that worked well or something you're struggling with.
Well, I did, yes, I did some great experiments via Zoom. Like I did some STEM lessons where we did straw towers, or we did a physics lesson stacking up 3-ounce bathroom cups, one-dimensional, in a 30-minute period. And as I was doing it, they were doing it, and we counted down 30 minutes, so they had the stress factor of time, and we worked in pairs. That was great. I do a lot of STEM teaching science, But the one thing that I struggled with throughout this entire remote learning is some of my students cheating.
You can, instead of having them do 5 equations or you know, whatever it is that you need to have explaining a cell, right? Rather than having them answer 20 multiple choice questions, provide them a picture as a prompt and then ask them to explain. So, you know, what is, you know, I don't know. I'm not big science person. What's mitochondria? That's exactly the powerhouse of the cell. My child taught me that. But, or you know, you're looking at a 2-step equation. Can you explain? I also have 3 Facebook groups, so feel free to join them. The one Facebook group is really specifically for early childhood educators. The second Facebook group is for any teacher, tech integration specialist. We have some administrators and tech directors in there as well. And finally, I have one group dedicated to really principals and high school administrators. I have my email address at the bottom of the screen. Generally, I work with all tech integration specialists at the elementary level and tech directors at the high school level. So they're usually the first people that you talk to. And they have my contact information as well. So if you're ever trying something and it's not working for you, either your tech integrator can talk to me or I'll be happy to talk to you too. Where you know, this is a child who is going to 9th grade and is now balancing equations, and the teacher asks you to help figure out where the child went wrong. So, you know, an 8th grader algebra student can use what they learned and in Flipgrid explain to you why the student went wrong. And that's as good an assessment as having them do five equations. So some things, you know, could be more of like an interview with the student rather than a standard test. But Jane, I'm so glad you had such a good experience with the stacking the cups and
Oh yeah,
hours.
I did. I tried to make it fun, you know, for myself, for them, and it really worked out well. Other than, like I said, some of the problems with the cheating on the test. After those first 2 weeks, which were not good, it really did flow smoothly. It was good.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. And you know, a lot of what the elementary student teachers are seeing are what the high school teachers experience already. The high schools often have more funds where they can buy programs that allow you to set timers, allow you to freeze the screen so they can't flip into a, you know, a web browser. So if you have tools like Christine's book series has, you know, those are some things that maybe you can explore or reach out to the publisher of the books you use and see if some of those free tools have those kind of more high school opportunities to lock tests down.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, so we have about 10 more minutes left. Lisa, what would you like to share with us?
Actually, it's a question that a number of my teachers have come back to me with, and I'm sure everybody's had it. Zoom burnout, Zoom boredom. The teachers and the parents want the kids to Zoom, but you could see after a while, they're changing their backgrounds, they're putting themselves upside down, they're playing with their dog. Any good suggestions to get kids to focus?
I can tell you, we're looking for next year, part of our plan, if we go into this, we're not doing video conferencing unless it's a social thing or someone needs extra help. We said if we have to social distance, we're gonna be on a schedule of classes for half day. And they'll have their snack break, whatever that time, they'll eat their lunch. And then after the lunchtime, we'll have the Zooms to do like office hours. And if you need extra help or you miss something, we'll record the live streaming sessions, because Zoom, in my opinion, is terrible for this environment. And I mean any video conferencing. I mean, I use the example, you know, who's eating a sandwich, who's, like you're saying, distracted. Really, to be effective, you need to have 2 teachers. One that's monitoring the chat and what the kids are doing, and one who could privately address, nothing terrible, but distracting, and one where the teacher could teach. And then if you have 50 kids, you need one person for every screen. But you know what I found in the last couple of weeks, where we've been having back-to-back Zooms all day, every day. I mean, it's like 8 Zooms one after the other. I literally cannot see, and that's even with wearing the good glasses. At the end of it, I can't read, I can't look at anything. It is terrible for the eyes. You know, so there's just so much distraction that goes on with that. So we're going to test it over the summer, live streaming lessons, following a schedule that they'll be recorded. And then opportunity with another piece of software similar to Seesaw, Class Kick, you could see what they're doing at the time. So you could pause and say, all right, everyone do number 2, and the teacher can assess, you know, what they're doing. And then at the end of the day, we can all get together, whether you need to or want to, and like that. But to me, I don't think video conferencing is sustainable for teaching. There's just too many distractions.
The way I did the Zoom is, and it really worked out well. I did test reviews with them. I did reviews of the science sections with them after I had put notes in Google Classroom. And I just made it quite clear that we are pretending we're in school. Doesn't matter that I see your living room and you see mine.
And we recorded lessons, every lessons that we recorded, we posted on Google Classroom. And then we did phone calls, we did individual Zooms if someone had, or a small group if they had questions. Most of the grades had once a week a social where they played bingo or whatever they, you know, did whatever. The younger grades a little bit more because they need that a little bit more than say 7th and 8th. But like I said, the kids they're great kids, and nothing they were doing was horrible. And it's just, it's because it's intense looking, you know, for a sustained amount of time. You know, you're in school, you're taking a break even if you're on the computer, even if you're working on the computer.
Even in talking to friends in other businesses, you're working harder at home than you normally do in your office or school setting. It's just, yeah, it's mind-boggling. I think we all need a rest this summer.
Oh gosh, yes, we do all need a rest, that's for sure. And Lisa, you know, just thinking too, for everybody, every single school is different. So every principal is working with their faculty in the Archdiocese in their own way with their own choices of tools. You know, I know a lot of high schools and probably the better part of our elementaries started thinking through what they want behavior to be like. So it's still the acceptable use policy, so that's standard. It's still the student handbook, that's standard. But they're coming up with a very small school-wide list of expectations. So if you have your Zoom camera on, you're expected to be dressed in no worse of a way than you'd come to dress down at school. And, you know, you don't know what these kids' home lives are like. So unfortunately, a bedroom could be the only quiet place, but, you know, the teacher needs to work with them on where is it appropriate in that room, or at least, you know, the bed needs to be made.
Right, right.
Another thought just for all of you to consider over the summer as we head into next year is if you do have these Zoom meetings or Google Meets, you might want to consider making a new classroom job, being the chat room monitor. And so that person's job would be that the teacher would be able to check in with the student, or the student would raise their hand and let you know that, you know, Mrs. Smith, there's a question about that last step you did in the chat room. So there's some ways that you could look at classroom jobs and see how you might want to moderate them in a digital way.